Hey guys, it's hold on, let me finish the hair. It's your boy, Ballface8020, back again with another great commentary. Um, I had spoken in the about about the whole stand up for yourself thing, but I am actually, in all seriousness, going to do things a little bit differently, and that is, I'm going to use a story, a true story from my own life, as kind of a sort of a black pill parable and to try to kind of illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. Because this was something that I've been thinking about doing for a while, is doing more autobiographical stuff. And I still, and I said in a previous video that I didn't want to do a lot of autobiographical stuff because I don't think people really care that much. Like, it's one thing for G-Man to do it because I don't actually, I have to be honest, I don't really get why G-Man's autobiographical stuff is so good, is so popular. And I guess because a lot of people can maybe identify with it. I don't know. Maybe it's because he puts himself down so much and people like seeing that. And, you know, but, uh, but, but people might like some of the autobiographical stuff if it's used to illustrate, a black pill point. So this is, I'm doing two birds with one stone, and we'll see what the audience reaction is for this. Like for me, I don't really care. Like downvotes and negative comments are kind of like whatever. Those that you're gonna get those. Usually, I get an okay reaction in the comments and the votes. But what is demoralizing though is making a video and then not getting views. So that's kind of, I mean, like, let's say I get like 1,000,000 downvotes on this, but maybe it gets some views, then I would be inclined to make more. And I mean, maybe it gets 0 views, and I still might make more. I don't know. But I'm just telling you, just thinking out loud. So anyway, here's the story. This is, I think, first let's just talk a little bit about the whole stand up for yourself thing. We're all drilled into this. At least if you're a middle class kid. I don't know, some of you guys may have been from poorer backgrounds, some of you are from non-American backgrounds, and things might be different there. But in the United States, and I'm assuming in all the Anglosphere, at least for the middle and upper class, you are drilled from your kid that you need to stand up for yourself. Now, you're supposed to use your words. You're not supposed to use violence to stand up. That's strongly discouraged. But you're supposed to be like assertive or whatever, and it's just like, it's really not a productive message to teach kids. And then it gets stuck into your head, this whole thing, and then so you end up like guys they're not even in high school anymore. They're like grown up they're out of college, and they're still worried about getting respect for others or standing up for themselves. And it's just like, none of that shit even matters, man. But whether it matters or not is almost besides the point. It's the point is standing up for yourself necessarily going to be a productive thing? And there are times where it is called for, but there's a lot of times where it's not. And I think that this story will illustrate it. Okay, so this comes from back when I was in the summer between 7th and 8th grade. So I would have been 13 years old at the time. Now, as a 13-year-old, even though I am short now, I was extremely scrawny, even scrawnier than I am now, but I was about average height. Now, I was 13, so which meant I was basically too young to work, or you work like a wage job, at least without working papers. Like, I'm not sure if you were allowed to do it with working papers or not. I thought you had to be 14, but I don't remember. But what I wasn't too young to do was caddy. Some of you guys might not even know what caddying is. I don't even know if they have it anymore. I'm assuming most caddies have been replaced with golf carts. But basically, there's different ways of doing it. But basically, you carry a guy's golf bag around while he golfs, and paid pretty good money. I would say, like, if you were doing a single bag, you would take 4 hours, and you would get paid $25. $25 minimum, and up between 25 and 40. Usually, it was more like 30. And for 4 hours work, that wasn't that bad back then, because back then the minimum wage, which is what you would be getting working McDonald's for the same amount of hours, was like 5 something. So the money was good. But anyway, this was my first year doing it, and I'd actually had only been out. I'd gone out once in the spring on a weekend, and then once early in the summer. And so we were in the early part of the summer where I was trying to, I was in the we didn't really, if you ever see the movie Caddyshack, we didn't actually have a Caddyshack. We had this like outdoor caddy thing where like you could sit on this bench or you could sit against the wall, but it was an outdoor thing. And the guy would come out, the caddy master, he would come out the door, look at everybody over, and then he would pick somebody, like he would say like ball face 80-20, come on. And then you would go and you would grab that golfer's bag and you'd meet them at the first hole or shit like that. So anyway, I was there. What I was doing was I knew that like if I got there first thing in the morning on a weekday, because the early stuff would only be there on Saturdays and Sundays, and the course was closed on Mondays. But then Tuesday through Thursday, you got there early, you're not going to get out because nobody's golfing early then. On the weekdays, you might get some stuff in the afternoon, and then some members' wives playing in the morning. But I knew that, but I was getting there at 7 every day because I wanted the caddy master to see that I was parked out there waiting, and I was paying my dues in terms of time. So I go there and been doing that every day. But there was this kid who was so I'd been doing that for a while, and that's when I ran into this kid who I didn't know from school. I was in middle school at the time. I didn't know him from school, like as in we'd ever spoke, but I knew of him. I'm not going to say his last name, but I'll just say his first name. It was, I'm not even going to say I'm not going to say his first name since it was, but it's so common that it would let's think of another first name. We'll just call him Bill. And so Bill, he was there, and I had another friend who I went with who he had been tormenting the day before. So because that's where we were sitting there all day with other piece of shit kids who were 13, 14, 15, but really more in the 13 to 14 range. And there's nothing to do, so what do? They the kids pick on each other or hassle each other. And especially me, I'm a dork now. I was a super dork then. I'm an easy target. And this kid who, like I said, we didn't know each other in school, but I guess we knew of each other because we were in the same class. So this one day, though, he had decided that he was really going to pick on me because previously he'd been picking on this friend of mine. He wasn't there that day, so he was picking on me. And the way he would do it was like the most annoying way you can possibly imagine. What he would do is he would go, ball face 80-20, guess what? And then when I say what, he would say, you're gay. And ball face 80-20, guess what? You're gay. Ball face 80-20, guess what? And then if I didn't say anything, he would just keep saying it, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? And he there's nothing I can do because I can't leave the place because I need to be there to try to get out. And he's not going to stop doing it. And so you can say nothing, and then he'll just keep saying guess what, guess what, guess what, and then sometimes he'll just be like, what, even though he's going to say you're gay. And by the way, I'm sure some of you younger guys, calling somebody gay probably isn't even an insult in your generation, but me, this is sort of the late 90s. It was considered the biggest insult you could. I mean, it was a common insult. Everybody said it, but it was the biggest insult. And I didn't. It wasn't like he was literally saying that I was gay, but you get the idea. It's something you don't call another guy. It's bad. And so anyway, but this went on for 5 hours. Okay, can you? It just didn't stop, and so I was left with a choice. I'm how do I deal with this? Do I turn tail and run? Do I just leave the place because I can't deal with this shit anymore, or do I stand up for myself? And this is when keeping it real goes wrong. So, and by the way, he was literally saying, "Hey, ball face 80-20," because I've actually had a few people ask me about this. Why do you call yourself ball face 80-20? It's Guys, that's my given name. That's my name. I'm not going to tell you my last name, but my first name is Ballface 80-20. Yes, it is caused me bullying. Yes, I know it's not usual for numbers to be in a name, and it's really not really usual for people to be named Ballface, period. I mean, even if it wasn't for the numbers, it would be weird, but that actually is my name. But anyway, he was saying, so I'm thinking dude, how do I handle this shit? And, so, but again, because I had this bullshit idea that you need to stand up for yourself, that's what I did. So I walk over to him, and I'm like, Bill, let's fight. And and I was scared, but I was like, here's the thing, because this is when like my height comes into thing. I was about average height for my grade. Like I said, I'm short now, but I was average height at the time because my growth spurt was a bit earlier, and I was a little older than most of the kids in my class anyway. Um, this guy Bill was a turbo manlet. I assume from everything I've heard, he probably still is he was really short. To give you an idea of how short he is, my guess is, assuming he stayed on that same growth trajectory, he probably grew up to be around 5'4". He was a really short guy. He was fairly strongly built. He would later on he would get to be like start to look like he would start to really fill out and look really strong. But at this time he hadn't quite filled that, hadn't quite filled out yet. So you could tell by looking at him he looked strong. Or not that he looked strong, he looked stronger than me. And yes, this was a guy who he did get a lot of shit about his height. Not only that though, but he was a champion wrestler. But nobody really took it seriously because he was a champion wrestler, knocking off kids who were like 2 years younger than us, which was like, when you're in middle school, that's a big deal. Like that, those 2 years really matter because he was, so much lighter than all the kids in our grade. He was probably even lighter than me at the time. I was, as skinny as I was because he was just so short. So anyway, and I was kind of wary of him being a wrestler. I knew he played football. I knew he played lacrosse, and he was athletic, and he seemed tough. He certainly wasn't scared of me. And I could tell, like when I said let's fight, that he was not scared at all. And I'd never been in a fight. I don't know if he had been in one by then either. And I don't know what my game plan was. I guess I thought I was just going to out-muscle him. I don't know. So finally he was like, kind of like, dude, no, it's not even worth my time. I'm not even going to bother. But, I insisted, and he was like, you know what, man, fine. Let's do it. Took a small crowd from the place with us. They were like, well, hey, we want to see this shit. And we go to, we walk this place. It's about like, we walk basically across the street. We leave the golf course, and we walk across the street. And he just kind of walks straight up to me, with this like shit-eating grin on his face. And, he just doesn't even put his hands up. He's just walking up with his hands down. He said, I'm waiting for you to make the first move, man. Waiting for you to throw the first punch. So I'm like, okay, what do I do here? And it didn't even really occur to me to try to punch him in the face. I was like, I can't do that. So I just kind of like made this like weak grab at him. And he didn't really try to like out wrestle me, which was kind of surprising. He just kind of like pulled his arm away and then yanked and started wailing on me and started punching me. And then but at this time there was this woman driving, an older woman driving, I guess up on the street that so she could see us, and she was like, "Hey, you guys, knock it off." So we're like, "Okay, great. Guess we can't fight here. We're gonna have all these bystanders." So then we went to this place next to the golf course. We walked like another block down back the other way, and by this stage, I was like, this isn't really going to work out so well for me, is it? And so we're there, and then we get the fight starts and stuff. So it's the same thing. I don't even try to throw a punch. I try to like out wrestle him, and he's punching. I'm not punching back. I'm trying to out wrestle him. Goes to the ground, but he's a wrestler, and he's probably stronger than me anyway. He gets better thing. He's hitting me on the ground. I get back up. I try to out wrestle him again. I get back. He's able to get to top position, like so. He's kind of like leaning on top of me, right, and just wailing on me with the other hand, and then finally pop right in my big nose. Crack! I can feel it just crack, and and then I was like, you know what, Bill, you've won. That's enough. You won. So he gets up and he's just kind of like, yeah, take that, bitch. And he walks back, presumably feeling like a badass. And I'm just left there. I got this broken nose now, and I'm like, well, that didn't really solve anything. And so I ended up. The whole thing was just a mess. So I ended up actually having to get the nose surgically repaired. Now, knowing when I may tell the story of the second time I had my nose broken, and what I know now is that there was no need to get it surgically repaired. You get a broken nose, you just push it back in. But I didn't know that at the time. So And that's what I did the second time. I just, got in front of a mirror and pushed it mostly back into place. The probably straighter after the second break than it was after the first. Yeah, so so that was just, and so it didn't solve anything. He continued to harass me for the rest of the summer when he saw me, and even beyond that. And he would do it the same thing, the whole ball face 80-20. Guess what? You're gay. And it's so it didn't end up being a disaster for me, but it was certainly, was something I didn't work out well for me, and let's just say it that way. And so, but it could have been worse, but it still wasn't good. The whole thing was not ideal. So even at the time, I didn't really learn anything from it. It wasn't until years later, looking back, that I actually saw what I should have done differently. And and this goes back to what we're told. We're told not. It's really a blue-pilled idea that you've got to stand up for yourself, and it's that's such bullshit, because no, you don't have to stand up for yourself. What you have to do is you have to choose your battles. There are times where you've got nothing to lose, where or the only if either you fight back or you die, and maybe you die anyway, but at least you go out swinging. There's times like that, but I had a choice. I could have continued. I had two choices. I could have sat there and continued taking it, or I could have been fuck this, I can't deal with this right now, leave, come back another day when hopefully he's not there. Because I did continue to caddy for the rest of the summer. It wasn't like he was there every day or some shit. Or most of the time, that we would run into each other. No, I did it really out of pride. Out of pride. It wasn't, and even if it wasn't about pride, even if it was something I'm this guy is so annoying, I just want him to stop. This wouldn't have been the way to do it. The violence. And what's something that's funny though? I should have mentioned this earlier. Is that I think, knowing what I know now, just because I just now, I had never been in a fight. I didn't know what to expect. But I think that knowing what I know now, I could, because I know how to fight, I could have beaten him. And then, even though he was probably stronger than me and knew how to wrestle, I think that, if I had, kept the fight on the feet and used my superior reach, I would have won. I would have won. A year later, as he filled out, I probably wouldn't have been able to. But even if I had won, it wouldn't have been worth it. That's the thing. That's the thing is so when I go back and look back at it now, because now do it all over again, and even give me the fighting abilities I have now, so that I could have beaten him, and even given me my better knowledge of weight training, so I could have done weightlifting back then, was a little bit more productive, so I wouldn't have been quite as frail. Even giving me that, I wouldn't have fought him, because it was just because what would the point have been? Was what because he was disrespecting me? So what? So what? Who cares? It's just it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And in the case, and then I remember, even after the time, thinking about it, later that summer, when I was thinking, when it was all over, I was thinking, let's say that I had whooped Bill's ass, and I said, well, then what was the game plan when somebody starts bothering me who isn't 6 inches shorter than me, who is, because it's only a matter of time, right? The thing, especially me, I wasn't a big guy at the time. There's, if anybody's always going to run into somebody bigger, you're always going to run into somebody bigger than you or stronger than you, or who's a better fighter than you, eventually. So this whole that's, and you feel you hear so many guys say, oh, I would always stand up for myself for that shit. It's yeah, well, where's the end point of that? Because there's always going to be your physical. You're always going to meet your match physically eventually. So what would I have done then? Let's say I had whooped Bill's ass, and it would have been okay, well then what happens when it's the next time? Who's a guy who who I can't handle physically? Then what do I do? So I think but I always kind of wondered, what would blue pillars say to do in this situation? Use your words. My words weren't going to work. The fact he was unintimidated by me, and the reverse was true. I was intimidated by him. And at school, I know we were on summer vacation, but at school he had more status than me. He was more popular. He was more respected. I wouldn't call myself unpopular, but I certainly wasn't respected. And So what the hell were words going to do? So words don't work. That would have been the worst advice. Try to be assertive, to be like, hey, Bill, that's not a nice way to talk to me. You shouldn't do that. I don't appreciate that. He would have just laughed in my face. And so and then fighting obviously didn't work. So um, I don't want to be out here telling people to just lay down and die, because that's not what I'm saying. But there are times where just lying down is the right decision. And in this case, I think it would have been a perfect example of it. What I should have done is I should have lied down and taken it. Because my best friend who I was caddying with, my best friend at the time who I was caddying with, who was there, he had been getting taunted mercilessly by the same guy a couple days before me. And I always felt like maybe it was karma that it happened, because I didn't do anything to stand up for him. In fact, I was just happy it wasn't me on the receiving end, and at the time at least. And but my so that same guy, what did he do? He did nothing. He lied down and took it. He had to leave for a while to go cry, and he had to go cry, and then he came back. He came back a few minutes later because he wanted to caddy so bad. But he wasn't going to but he didn't try to stand up for himself. And the reason is, I guess at the time I thought maybe it's because he was a coward, and maybe there was something to that, but he just made the smarter decision. So it's not even a moral thing. I'm not saying that, like, it makes you morally at a higher level to not fight back. I'm saying that sometimes it's just smart. It's just smart. And you can go through this in anything in life. There's going to be people who disrespect you or treat you poorly, and it's not always the right choice for you to fight back. And if this is the path you go down, that you're always going to stand up for yourself, let me tell you where that leads you. As this reminds me of, how am I doing for time? Okay, I'm not doing that bad for time. There was this time on short cells where there's this video. Maybe some of you guys have seen it. I don't know. It's not even a video. It's more like a really short video, almost a GIF. And there's some normie guy, all right, who's indigestion. Sorry, I don't know what that's about. Hopefully I'm not dying. So there's this normie guy at the bar, and he's waving to the bartender for a drink, and this Giga Chad, who must have been 6'7", 260 some pounds. I don't know if he was on steroids or if he was just naturally big. Comes behind him, grabs him underneath in the armpits, and then just lifts him up like a child, puts him to the side, and goes to the bar, and then holds up to the bartender one finger or two fingers, and then you can see him say something I guess saying what his order was, and leaving the normie guys just standing there looking up at him like, what just happened, or what do I do? And and when in the comments there was some guy, and I understand the feeling completely, but he was saying, oh no, this is where you gotta take out a knife or something and stab. And he was being serious. I'm not saying he would have actually done it, but you got to take a knife and stab this guy, or use a bullet, or use your superior numbers to stomp on the guy's head. And here's what I was thinking. I was like, okay, look, the big guy, the Chad type or Alpha, whatever you want to call him, the Superman, he absolutely deserves all that. He absolutely deserves to get, stabbed, shot, had his face stomped in with the metal boots. But the thing is, presumably you're not willing to escalate it to that point. And what are you going to do? Spend the rest of your life in jail because some idiot disrespected you? It's a dead end. It's just not smart, So better to do is to live to fight another day. And then here's what I was thinking is, I even sensed this. Imagine if it had been somebody like a young Jack Nicholson who this would happen to, who's a naturally alpha guy, who he had, and that super apex Chad had done the same thing to him. Do you think Jack Nicholson would have gone and stabbed or shot him? No, he would have taken a look at the guy and been like, whoops, I guess I'm outmatched here, and just lived to fight another day, because he would know that and I'm not even trying to say you should be like Jack Nicholson, but I'm just giving you an example of how an alpha male would react to it. And he would be like, live to fight another day. Sometimes you're just beat. Sometimes you're just outmatched, and it happens. So, don't think that you necessarily always have to stand up for yourself, and don't feel bad if you don't have the courage to stand up for yourself. Here's where I would say would be a problem. If you're not standing up for yourself out of fear, I'm not going to shame you or anything like that, but I think that that could be problematic. So don't not stand up for yourself out of fear. Um, but don't stand up for yourself in certain situations because it's not a smart play. I mean, being afraid, that's a problem. That's the problem. I'm not again I'm not shaming you, but I'm saying that would show me something's wrong, because you need to not you shouldn't be afraid of anybody. But just because you're not afraid doesn't mean that you don't have to still be smart. And I think that that's the most important thing. Like, I should never have been intimidated by Bill, but I also should have been smart enough to know, like, you know what, I'm outmatched. I just can't do anything to stop this guy. And maybe like I said, even if I could have, I think but that's more of that's a different philosophical thing. It's like, even if I could have stopped them, I probably, like I said, looking back, I think I could have beaten them, and I still wouldn't have done it, because I just don't think it's worth it. And again, like, eventually you're going to run into that. And I just think it's just, physical violence is physical violence. There's a place for physical violence. I think every boy should strength train. I think every boy, especially smaller guys, should learn how to fight to defend themselves, but like, in case it becomes necessary. But it should always be a total last resort, not just because somebody looked at you the wrong way or some guy was being a jerk. It has to be like, you're doing this to survive or to protect yourself from bodily harm, or somebody else from bodily harm. Not over words and shit. Even if morally it would be justified. So yeah, some bit of epilogue though. That guy Bill, I can't remember if he was in my class the following year or not, or if he had gone to some private school on a wrestling scholarship. But supposedly he ended up turning out pretty bad, the last I heard. Like, he never outgrew his manletism, and he was using steroids in high school, and when he was on that wrestling scholarship. So I don't know if it's done at his growth or not. I feel kind of bad, because I haven't thought about this guy in years, and now I'm kind of like thinking, like, man, I hope that I hope things ended up really bad for him. Which look, I don't hope things have ended up really bad for him. But if they did, I admit that I would take some kind of bitter satisfaction in it, which is wrong of me. I did hear a funny story about him though, and it was this because you can tell this kid, he had a chip on his shoulder about being shorter, right? There was this guy who I went to high school with, and he was like, and I was talking to him about this whole incident, and he was like, "Oh, Bill, yeah, I remember him." He said there was this time, and this kid who I was talking to was a little bit bigger than me, about my height, but thicker. And he was like, "Oh yeah, there was this time that I was talking to," and he would mention this other guy who we had gone to school with. I saw, and he was with Bill, and Bill like asked, like, "Hey, can I try your bike?" Because I had my bike next to me, and I just said no. And then he just snuck punched me in the face for no reason. So then I just jumped on him and started pummeling him, and he was bleeding from his eyes. And then he just said, "Okay, man, stop. You win." Man, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I feel kind of bad for enjoying that too, but I'm going to admit that I do. If you're talking about somebody who had it coming, he actually had a younger brother who was an even bigger piece of shit than he was, just as short but much scrawnier. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, I know I always ramble. I think this one was probably worse than usual. Hopefully, some of you guys liked the story though. That's all for now, and I will see you in the next.